Welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Today, I'm speaking to Director of Performance at AS Roma, Darcy Norman. This episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is sponsored by Vald Performance, the team behind the NordBord hamstring testing system. So the NordBord is the fastest and easiest, most accurate way to measure hamstring strength in under 90 seconds. So the NordBord gives you the right information so you can make the right decisions for your players at the right time. So it's already in use by over half the Premier League and dozens of other elite teams around the world. So the NordBord testing system is on its way to becoming the gold standard for measuring and monitoring hamstring strength. So if you are interested in getting to know anything more about the NordBord, you can visit Vald Performance, that's VALD performance.com, to find out more. Thanks for tuning in to episode 89 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. So today we've got Director of Performance at AS Roma, Darcy Norman. So it was great to get Darcy on, and definitely lives up to the hype about being a really nice guy, and also fits in with the stereotypical great Canadian guy. So in this chat we discuss obviously everything to do with Roma, living in a foreign country, obviously what Darcy is, and dealing with the issues that come with that, along with driving in Rome, which anyone that's been there knows it's an absolute nightmare. So we also discuss his weekly structure and the functional movement screen, which is an interesting topic that is again doing the rounds and been discussed a lot. So we get Darcy's thoughts on that one. But just before we get going with Darcy, we have the Sports Science Minute, sponsored by Coach Me Plus, where Doug McKenney from Coach Me Plus is going to discuss culture and creating buy-in for a data collection environment, and that's both within the organisation, coaches and players. So I hope you enjoyed the little segment from Doug. Again, very informative from the guys at Coach Me Plus, and we'll get straight into the episode after with Darcy Norman.
Creating the culture for collecting information starts with how it benefits three areas: the organization in general, the coach, and the players. And it actually has to be equal. It has to be a total commitment from everybody for it to be successful. And I think that's the key factor to this. When a sports performance coach or strength coach, physiologist, bring it to the attention of the organization that we need to be able to collect this data so that we can make good, sound decisions about recovery, about work, and how it will, create a winning environment on a year-to-year basis. And one of the key things to that is that, there's going to be a lot of discussion how it's implemented. Every player is going to have to wear a heart rate monitor every day, and how are they going to react to that? And these monitor belts, a lot of times the players will look at it from the standpoint of, well, it's uncomfortable. And, we've seen, over time that that's not an issue at all. They get used to it just like they get used to their shoulder pads, their elbow pads, their knee pads. Everything's, it's just a process, and the process needs to be put in place effectively. But as I mentioned, it's got to be equal. The organization has to look at it from the standpoint of they're protecting their investment by monitoring this internal load. And that information on a day-to-day basis over a period of time allows them to make good, sound decisions in the present and the future. How is this athlete going to get better? How is he going to help our team get better? Where's that line where, we've got to intervene and help this guy recover properly so that he plays at his highest level? If that stuff's presented properly to the organization, they see the value to it. And the same thing from a coach's standpoint. Now, it's not so much on, it's more about winning and losing. What do I need to do to win? How do I implement this information that I'm getting from our sports science people, our strength and conditioning people? Well, we're showing them what it's costing every drill, every game, every practice. We have a cost factor to it. What is it costing our team? And when do we need to recover? We're going to be traveling at these times, and we're going to be sleep deprived. So, they have the ability to make good, sound decisions as well, but mostly at the level of, practices, games, travel, not so much about decision making about the player or the team itself. And from a player standpoint, this is, I think, is an easy one because the player says, how is this helping me? Well, we can give them information now. Where am I at now? How well do I recover right now? How much is this costing me? And where do I need to go from having this information? And then how do I get there?
To get your weekly dose of applied sports science updates, go to CoachMePlus.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. That's CoachMePlus.com.
Thanks for tuning in to the Pacey Performance Podcast. So really excited to get Darcy Norman on the podcast this morning. So welcome to the podcast, Darcy.
Rob, great to have me. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. So just anyone that doesn't know who you are and kind of what you're doing at the minute, do you just want to give the listeners a little bit of information on your background and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I'm originally from a little town in northern Alberta, Grand Prairie. Grew up ski racing. That's what got me out of Grand Prairie. Ended up down in the States, college racing, and then that's when when skiing, I realized my Olympic career was never going to happen. Started looking at other things I could do and got into athletic training. And then from there, that was at Washington State University, got a biology degree, as well as athletic training, kinesiology, physical education. Came out, opened a personal training practice, did speed camps and trained kids, and worked at a few clubs in the Seattle area, and then ended up going back to PT school in just a quest to learn more. So I became a physio, did that, went through all my manuals and manual therapy stuff, and had a clinic in Seattle for a little bit. And then really where the sports side really took off is when I joined with Exos in 2003, formerly Athletes Performance, and was with them 2006. Made a brief move to Lake Tahoe, California, where I still have a place, so was doing more kind of consulting stuff, and then ended up taking a job with Jurgen Klinsmann at Bayern Munich in 2008 as a rehab coach there, fitness and rehab coach. So that was 2 years, ended up coming back to the States for family reasons, and then had the opportunity to join the German national team. And so had the pleasure of working with those guys up until, the beginning of this year, or June of 2015, when I took on the director of performance role at AS Roma, which is where I'm currently at.
So in that time, you missed a tiny little important bit, which was winning the World Cup.
Yeah, it was nice to be on that boat with an oar in the water, and phenomenal experience. Definitely, kind of a life changer for me, because it really made me realize what's possible from a team, culture, environment, performance, everything. And I think, people that have had the opportunity to be in those situations, it makes you realize what's really possible. And then it's, keeping the fire burning to recreate it.
Obviously, there's a kind of simple answer to this next one, but what made the Germans, that specific team and that specific maybe support staff so able to go that far? Obviously, better players is the kind of simple answer.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, what behind the scenes and culture and what kind of things you did?
Yeah, it's I've said this on other interviews. I think when we reflected back, I think every department within the team would have their own 2 cents about it. Our reflection on the performance side, we were talking with a friend, and it was like, gosh, sound like you guys supply chain managed human performance. And if, it's worth looking up the definition of supply chain management, because you can really take that business prospect and put it towards elite athletics. And and it's been a process, as supply chain management is a process. You kind of figure out where you're at, you set up checklist systems to move you forward, and then you use data to objectively give you feedback on how and where to upgrade things. And the process for Germany, and I can't even do it justice, I think started back in 2004, when they weren't as successful as they thought. And it even started even before that with all their academies around Germany. Like, one thing I don't think people realize, that if you're trying to get noticed in Germany, I don't think you have to travel further than 30 kilometers. A kid doesn't have to travel more than 30 kilometers to a DFB sanctioned club that gets the kid in the system and moves them forward. So it's pretty impressive. And then in 2004, Jurgen really upgraded the mindset of the first team, and the performance culture of the first team, and that just carried its way through with guys like Oliver Bierhoff, the manager who's been with the team, and Yogi Löw, who's now the head coach but was Jurgen's assistant coach, has kind of carried on that tradition. And there's a slew of people to name that have all had an unbelievably that open growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, and just everybody rowing the boat in the same direction in unison as hard as they can, and the players as well, like all good guys, that were working hard and had a vision and a common goal, and got it done. So it's phenomenal. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Euro goes, and hope for the best for them.
Absolutely. So just on that kind of international scene, just to keep on that theme, was to ask you about the kind of physical aims of the small, short breaks that you actually got with the players. Maybe it'd be like probably a week maximum at times, maybe a couple of days. What was the kind of physical aims for them little short periods from your point of view?
Yeah, for the national team, you try and put guys into buckets, just so you can manage the groups easier, and then individualize it from there. But you had the guys that played tons of minutes, so you're trying to give them a little bit of reprieve and get their bodies back in order, and get them moving well and feeling good and feeling rested. Almost use the season as a big training block, and then you're using that week to kind of super compensate them. So then to try and get them a little freshness for the tournament. And then for the guys that didn't have quite the minutes, just kind of topping off the tank and getting their high speed qualities back and going. And so just really short, intensive sessions, and getting their bodies moving better, and from just being beat up. And so I think it was a combination of the recovery side with the mobility, stability, and just cleaning up all their bad habits.
Mm-hmm. So how much guidance would you get from the clubs themselves?
It's super variable. Some guys were really open to collaborating on information, and then some not so much. And it's hard, everyone's doing different testing, and so it's really hard to get a kind of standardized version of where you're at with things. And so, we would functional movement screen them. We would, not always would we do fitness tests. You knew that guys were fit from being in the season. So just through GPS numbers and quality of play, you kind of had an idea where things were at. We did, during national team breaks, collect GPS data, so we knew and had some numbers on guys. So, it was hard to, take that information from teams and then, and do programming with it. It was really keeping, just a general program of the team and individualizing as the guys came into camp, and just speaking with them, of what their needs were, and then adjusting from there.
So you mentioned the functional movement screen there, which is obviously a kind of a staple for Exos, but there's obviously still so much conversation back and forth with regards to the FMS. Do you just want to give us a little bit of an insight into your thoughts behind it, and why you continue to use it, or Have you not used it?
Yeah. The FMS, and it's not the holy grail. And I think some people, when they, because of its popularity, people kind of took it as that and then start bashing it or whatever. Like, it just is what it is. It's giving you a snapshot into somebody's movements. And then from there, there's always, like, you watch somebody move and then you pick some other movements you might have that guy try to see where they're at with stuff. So one piece leads to another. There's no holy grail, and it's part of a system that I think for me has always worked, and I've always gotten good results from, and so I kind of stick with it. And there's certain things, like for football, I love the active straight leg raise. Everything about it, the reasoning. If you talk with Gray and Lee about what are the things that can go wrong with people, of why the active straight leg raise scores are what they are. It's more of a neurologic problem for a lot of people, not a physical problem, where their body just can't turn on the muscles because of length tension relationships or compensation patterns or whatever. And so somebody, like I've had guys that were ones on the FMS, if people are familiar with it, and within a week or sometimes one session, they become a 3, because it allowed you some information to make some adjustment in your programming to speed up their quality process. And and if those are the results I get, I'm going to take it all day long. And two, a lot of times it just keeps everybody on the same page, so you can have a more organized conversation to upgrade people. When you are bouncing guys back and forth and you're not always working with the same guys, you need systems. And I think it really stepped up the plate and got the party started on the whole mobility, stability, functional movement, quality of movement. It was one of the first kind of organized systems, I think, that really got it out there and got it going. So I love it. And I think it's a great tool. Is it like I said, is it the end all be all? Absolutely not. Can you specify more for your environment? Absolutely. I think there's an interesting definition that Gray had, when I spoke to him early on about it, he was like, you got to be careful that you're looking at movement quality and not looking at a strength quality. So like some people say, I want a single leg squat in my assessment, my movement assessment. And it's like, well, now you're like a single leg squat for some people, that it's not necessarily a movement quality. It can be a strength limiting quality. And so I think you have to be careful in your movement screens that you don't turn it into a strength limiting quality, because then you get a different set of results back. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the big thing is, as long as you have a system and a checklist and you can make educated choices from it, and it's repeatable, then I think you're on a good way.
So what was the intervention that you put in place on the active straight leg raise?
Yeah, just it's whatever terms you want to use, like an RNT or react. You're just basically getting the core muscles to reactively engage, so the spine stays stable, and then all of a sudden they're able to pick their leg up because they're not shooting a cannon from a canoe anymore. They're lifting it from a platform that's got a solid anchor point, and it's just getting their brain to turn it on. And so whether you use like high threshold, low threshold kind of terminology around it, or the RNT stuff, like it's all the same stuff. It's just how you frame it up. But a lot of times people's brains keep them tight. It's not that they are tight. It's just that your nervous system keeps you tight because it's saving you from yourself, of moving.
So just to get back onto the kind of football specific stuff, we talked before, and I've talked to guests in the past, and we, like I've said to you, we kind of get into the doldrums of football and the kind of things that maybe are wrong with it, or culture issues, blah blah blah. But we never actually get onto what you would do in now the ideal world. So that's what I'd like to kind of pose to you. Would be, if everything was as it as you think it should be, what would you do in terms of strength training in a football environment?
Yeah, I don't know if I know what the ideal world is yet. I'm searching for it and pushing for it. I definitely think football is traditionally undertrained in some respects. Some people are probably going to fall off their chair after hearing that, especially with what's been in the media lately. Of just doing too much. I think there is a lot of erroneous miles put in, and the quality of those miles could be cleaned up. On the same note, you could have a lot of other interventions that aren't being done, like strength training, that we know through rugby actually is a great example of what's tolerable. Obviously, you got to make it pertainable to the sport of football. But they run similar kilometers, similar intensities as football, and yet probably from a training standpoint and loading and weight room stuff, their volumes are far exceed ours. And, I think now in our current situation at AS Roma, our coach likes the weight room. And so we get in a solid 2 weight sessions. Well, I shouldn't say solid. We get in 2 weight room sessions a week that we're working on making them more solid. And then we also have a potentiation session that we do the day before matches. So we're in the gym 3 times a week in the season, and that is regardless of if we're playing 2 or 3 matches a day. We just periodize our weight a little different. Where we still weight train per se, but we do more stability-based lifts that helps reduce the weight and stress on the system, or alters the stress on the system, I guess. So I think, getting in a couple good weight room sessions a week gets us closer to ideal. And you could also do 4 weight room sessions and make them 15, 20 minutes, so guys aren't in there as the culture of the weight room gets improved in football. But I think guys are slowly realizing, and players are realizing, that the weight room is an important part of the product, and strength equals power, and power equals speed. And obviously you need the technique and the translation of those qualities to happen for that formula to work. But that's you also need those 3 big components from that, and it all harnesses off their strength qualities. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're just tipping the iceberg. And actually, I got a trip. We have the season wrapping up, and Ed Lippy and I are as C coach. We're heading over to Australia, and the guys in Sydney have been nice enough to open their doors. And I'm really curious to, that's one of the things I'm really looking for, is kind of seeing how they do it and what kind of volumes and organization and structure. And I definitely am aiming to bring some of that stuff back and see what we can put to use in the weight room at Roma.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned there about the potentiation session on a Friday. Do you just want to talk to us a little bit about, firstly, what the session may look like, and secondly, I'm guessing that was not in place when you came in. So how you got that kind of buy-in to be able to get in the gym on a Friday, which is very kind of unheard of.
Yeah. So we were kind of doing it, so you kind of, as a lot of guys know, in football, that your structure is very dictated by your coach. And so at the end of the day, you're just trying to wrap your stuff in around what the coach is doing. And some coaches, like the weight room, and some coaches not so much. And so for the coaches that don't like it, you typically have guys coming in and doing individual stuff before. And so we'd write programs like game day -1, -2, -3, 4, and so on, weight programs, and we'd periodize those over weeks. And so when guys came into the gym, it's like, oh, game day -3, this is what I'm doing, or this is a game day -3 +1, this is what you're doing in the weight room today. But you didn't have full team buy-in, right? Because there was guys that didn't like the weight room or didn't come in. If it wasn't imposed by the coach, then it wouldn't happen. And so we were doing it for the guys that were into doing it and wanted it. But then with our coaching change, this coach loves the weight room and he values the weight room, which is great for us because it's allowed us to really kind of expand our abilities to try and improve the overall weight room culture of the team. And so, he would ask us what our suggestions were for doing stuff the day before the match. And so we gave it to him and he had his thoughts and ideas, from a more generalist perspective. Like, I want to feel the guys turned on and, their muscles pumping and whatever, the case may be. And, we took it as, perfect potentiation time. And so with that said, we're also, limited by logistics. So you got a squad of 26 guys and trying to do a potentiation circuit in an organized way where it doesn't turn to absolute chaos. And we split up the groups. One group does, so we warm them up, get them going, general movements, and then do some kind of running based skill stuff, single leg runs, A skip, B skip, that kind of stuff, just to get them turned on. And then we split them up and do kind of a stability strength session. So just little games and exercises where they're partnered up and they do different stability work stuff. So for example, if you're doing a plank and guys are head to head and they're holding a stick between each other in a diagonal pattern and one guy's pulling and one guy's resisting and going back and forth, or doing like a side plank, same kind of thing where they're facing each other and they're holding a stick with their up arm and pulling back and forth. And so it makes it a little competitive and they're trying to knock each other off. And so there's some fun involved. And then the other group is doing kind of a series of plyos. So, and various like rapid response plyos, mid response, long response, very long response stuff. And, some is more vertical based, others like med ball toss, where they, go into a nice deep squat and try and throw the ball up and touch the roof. And then they can we have a sloping roof line in our gym. So they can move up the line to, challenge to get the ball to the roof. And so that makes it a little competitive, lateral box blasts, that kind of thing. Just rapid quick taps with their feet on another one. And then, med ball throwdowns would be another station. So, and, we put some targets on the floor and, little motivational things on the targets. So just just creating a good, fun environment, getting them wound up and turned on. And then we go out, do some rapid response footwork drills into some build-ups and sprints, and then, get to the ball and get going.
Mm-hmm. Do you just want to talk us through maybe an in-week session? So you've got a Saturday to Saturday and you're going to jump in the gym on a Tuesday. What would a session there look like? Yeah, so
so we say we play on a Saturday, we'd come in Sunday, so we don't do the day off. We come in and recover. So the guys that played everyone lifts. And so everyone lifts together. It's just the guys that play do more stability limiting lifts and for the lower body. And then the guys that didn't play do regular traditional kind of strength based lifts. And that's on the Sunday, Darcy, yeah? Yeah. So that if we played Saturday, it just depends where your game falls. Yeah, course, so we'd call that Sunday. Monday would be off. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on the situation. Typically on the Tuesday, we would do like a mobility stability. So they'd still come in the gym and we would kind of just spend some extra time doing more dynamic yoga, stability work, that kind of thing, and take a longer warm up and then go out on the pitch and do stuff. Or just do it out on the pitch. And then the Wednesday would be another lift, and it would be more of a traditional strength-based lift. And again, logistics being the limiting factor, we have 3 stations, 3 or 4 exercises per station. So, and it's kind of, you have a stability, a mobility, and then a strength-based lift. And sometimes we'll have 2 strength-based lifts in the station just to get in, horizontal pushes, pulls, vertical pushes and pulls, both for your upper body, lower body. And so, gosh, like one station might be RDLs, a leg lowering variation, kind of a bridging variation and a toe touch progression. So we'll kind of wrap up some of the, corrective-y exercises in the station. And so that becomes the rest. So when they get to the actual strength move of the RDL, we can, put some load on the bar and try and improve some strength. And then, another station might be like a thoracic 90-90, half kneeling quad hip flexor, rear foot elevated split squat, and dumbbell bench. And, they'll go through that. And then another one might be some pull-ups, reach roll and lifts, some lateral plank rows, and I'm just starting to throw out exercises now. But just to give people an idea. And then, they're in groups of whatever, 8, 9 guys, and they just circle through, and then we kind of man the lifts and help give better guidance on the prescription, because a lot of guys, we're trying to get more weight on the bar, and our guys don't have a big lifting acumen, and so doing basic lifts are basic, and they can't sit well in their hips because they just don't have that training history. And so this year a lot of it's been just upgrading guys' movement capacity to be able to do an RDL and keep their back straight, not flex, and move through their hips and just coordinate the pieces. So, and I think next year our preseason I'm really looking forward to it, because I feel like, we put a lot of work in this year on improving the movement quality and just getting guys more familiar with basic lifts. And next year we'll hopefully try and up our game.
So you've mentioned a couple of times about your stability limiting lifting, and that brings me on to a question that was chucked at me on Twitter, and that was just clarify the mechanism on stability limited lifting and maybe 1 or 2 examples. Yeah.
So I kind of started creating the phrase when I guess one thing in the history I forgot about was I got into pro cycling for about 5 years. So that was one of the things. And with cycling, the guys, obviously you don't need to get stronger. You don't really even want to put on a lot of lean body mass. I mean, you need to get stronger pound for pound, but it was really about training their nervous system. And so any weight they did put on, you wanted to make sure it was 100% guaranteed to contribute to the neurologic fatigue of what they had to do on a bike for thousands of reps over a 6-hour ride. And so with those guys, and same thing, not a big weight room culture, I kind of started calling them stability limiting lifts. So basically you can only lift as much as you can stabilize against. So for instance, like a chop or a lift is you get guys, and you see it all the time, that, for traditional lifts, they seem pretty strong, but then you put them in these kind of rotational push-pulls or single leg balance push-pulls or half kneeling position push-pulls where they don't have something to brace themselves against. And they look like, weak kids, because they can't stabilize their core well enough or their pillar well enough to be able to generate enough force to push weight. And then you have other guys, right, that have this, I think just we would call it like raw strength. Like they're just these brick shithouse guys that, I think that's a Canadian term, by the way.
We have that over here as well.
Just have this raw strength because they know how to turn on their pillar, their core, and generate force. I use the analogy of shooting a cannon from a canoe, and you change that canoe into a concrete platform so you can abide by the first law of physics. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, but you need a platform to generate that reaction from. And so like stability limiting lift, if you took an RDL, we might do a single leg RDL. And so, to keep the quality high, they can only pick up so much weight because the balancing is the limiting factor. And the weight can be enough to throw off that neurologic capacity of their balance. And so they can't pick up that much weight because they're going to fall over. Their quality sucks. So that would be an example of a stability limiting lift, for an RDL. For like bench, it might be a half kneeling, one arm cable cable press, but you're in a half kneeling position and you're trying to do like a horizontal push. But again, if you can't put your pieces together, you're not going to, you go to push the weight on the cable and the cable's going to pull you back and you're going to lose your balance. And so that way it allows guys that aren't used to picking up weight, you still get some benefit from the system and the process. It reduces the amount of DOMs, right? Like any guys that work in football, if a footballer feels any kind of DOMs, it's a muscle injury.
Yeah.
So it helps kind of get the process started and get guys bought in with, and get them feeling switched on, turned on, feeling better without that, the delayed onset muscle soreness that, you take one step forward and two steps back if too much of the muscle soreness happens. So, it's kind of a strategy I've used to get guys that aren't big weight room guys kind of on the program and bought into the program and realizing that the weight room can help them and get them moving along. And then it from a programming standpoint for the guys that played, their lower body lifts are stability limiting lifts.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way it reduces the amount of volume. They still get something out of it. We're still moving forward, and keeps everybody for the most part happy.
Mm-hmm. So how, obviously another thing that's probably I'm guessing wasn't in place when you came into the position was the lifting in some capacity on the Sunday or the day after the game. I mean, you've mentioned a couple of ways of kind of getting buy-in for them kind of sessions, but what was the crux of getting that, or what you've got at the minute, which sounds like decent buy-in from the guys on the Sunday or the day after the game?
Yeah, I think it's just listening to the guys and using their words against them. Because you just ask them, like if you ask any football guy, they'll be like, "Hey, when do you feel the most sore after playing?" And they're like, "Oh, 2 days after, I definitely feel it's hard to get going." I'm like, "Okay, perfect. You want that day off? Because that would be the perfect day to recover." And then two, we get guys to come in, we get them in, to get their bodies back in order, so they've been beat up from the game. So they get a good flush, good massage, get in the pool, get unloaded, get a little bit of a lift in, upper body wise. And then they feel good about it. And then it's much better to just go home. So you got all afternoon to relax. Also, like after the game, guys can't sleep, so their sleep after the game is shit. And sorry if I'm swearing. I apologize.
Fine,
yeah, it's a family podcast. They sleep poorly, and so we might as well just come in and get some stuff done that's going to benefit them, and then they feel better when they go home, and then they get a better night's sleep the next day. They have a nice easy day relaxing at home or doing whatever they do, and then we come in the third day and get back at it again. And so it's actually, the buy-in has been pretty easy, I guess. I think it's just convincing the coaches, and I think our coaches have been good about it, and it really hasn't been much of a problem. And the science shows, like, the swelling and all that kind of stuff takes 48 hours for your body to metabolize all that stuff, and the trauma. And so we just get better. I think we get better quality sessions, and it's just been a good rhythm for us. It also lets our staff kind of do a systems check of everybody and where we're at, so we can start building the week out for those guys. And if guys do have bangs and bruises, we can start changing the week for them, where if they go home from the game and then you don't see them for a day, it's hard to take inventory on where everyone's at when they come back in, and then it's a little bit of a shit show getting the party started. So yeah, it's always been something that has worked well for us.
So how does your weekly structure and your side of things change if there's 2 games a week? So like a midweek Champions League game, midweek cup game.
Yep.
Yeah, how does that change?
Yeah, I mean, you're training 7 days a week, or training, whatever. Everyone's in 7 days a week. So you play, say, Saturday, recovery session, and the guys that don't play train, so they go out and get their kind of high intensity minutes in to try and keep their tank topped off. And then, so in a Champions League week, you either have 2 days between games or 3 days between games typically. And so if it was 2 days, we would recover, then you move again, get everyone going, and then you play the next game. And then after that, you would recover again and do more. I have to work back, do more of a mobility session on the middle day, the kind of game day +2, -2. Do more of a mobility, stretch them out, really kind of open them up, almost a little bit of a recuperative situation. And then, they go out and get moving on the pitch a little bit. And then you have your game day -1 scenario, and then you're back playing again. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of fall into that routine. I people have heard interviews with me in the past. I have which I think is pretty commonplace nowadays, is I have kind of periodization set out for a 2-day game week, a 3-day game week, a 4-day game week, 5 days, 6 days, 7 day, 8 day, and what would be kind of the perfect solution in each of those. So then when we get our games in the calendar, I just kind of plug in the periodization for that game day situation or game day week. And then we just upscale or downscale volume depending on, what's come before it.
Nice. So just one last thing, and two more things. Both came from Twitter, like I mentioned before, and that was
Sure.
Developing movement efficiency.
Yeah,
I know that's something you discussed in high performance training for sports. Do you just want to talk to us a little bit about that and maybe how that fits the kind of football player, the football model?
Yeah, it actually fits really well. I think I'll walk you through my formula and see if I can get you to buy into it. Buy the new book. So it's great. Like, I'm definitely a practical guy, a hands-on guy. I'm not much of a bookworm, and it has to make, like, 1 + 1 has to make 2 for me. I have a hard time jumping to some of these places that guys want to go. I have to take my steps to get there. And so in talking to coaches, football coaches, and getting them to buy into the system, I was always trying to think of ways to communicate with them more effectively that was a win for everybody. And I came to grips with this one kind of theory that I'll roll by, and you can see if I got your buy-in or not. So I would ask the coaches, what do you want on the pitch? What's your goal with these players? And they, 9 times out of 10, the coach is like, yeah, I want explosive guys. I want fast guys that can do repeated explosive actions and do it, for 90 minutes. And so I was like, perfect. So that's power in the science term. That's power output and power endurance. And so if you look at the formula, power equals work divided by time. And I think everybody thinks, and this also, cycling really made me appreciate this, and also from the power meter based stuff is, everyone thinks that to get more powerful, you got to do more work. And that's not the case at all, right? Like, I can improve your power output by making you more efficient at what you're currently doing. And so, like, just based off Olympic lifts, right? Like, that's half the Olympic lifts is the efficiency of the movement. And then what makes it efficiency is the speed at which you do it. And so if you take the formula and if we tackle time first, right? So time is a factor of efficiency. And that gets broken down into skill, right? And football is a very heavy skill-based sport because you're playing with your feet. And so you spend a lot of time with the ball at your feet, improving the skill of moving the ball. And so the coaches love to hear that, right? Because that puts their stuff as first priority. Like, yep, 100%. I'm saying we need to do stuff with the ball. That's great. And then the second piece is movement efficiency, because we also know that you only spend 3% of your time with the ball. The rest of the time is getting from A to B to accept or deliver the ball. And so then it's movement efficiency. And so if somebody can just move better, You're improving their power output. And so that's where the movement efficiency stuff, their mobility, stability, all the skills of running, accelerating, and, just listening to the podcast the other day with Kevin Giles, which was fantastic. It's putting in all the, what he was talking about with the Brisbane Broncos, of just all this running efficiency. Because you look at some of the way these guys run, it's awful. Like, they're heel strikers. And if they could just, turn their square wheeled bike into a round wheeled bike, they would be flying. And getting them to appreciate that. And again, from the movement efficiency standpoint, that's again where kind of some of the stability limiting lifts and being more, corrective-y, comes into play, and getting the guys just feeling better. And so guys that don't have a big lifting history, that gets them bought in, because they're like, yeah, I'm doing this stuff and I feel great. And then once they have these movement patterns and they're feeling it and they're understanding it, they're like, okay, now what? And it's like, well, now we got to get over to the work side. And so now we got to add load to that, and we got to put some horsepower behind it, and then you go over to the more traditional side of the work, where you have the structure, the neurologic system, the muscular system. And then for me, the cardiac system is the last thing you train, from a specificity. That's a bad way to put it. Everything you do has a metabolic consequence. So basically, if you just appreciate what you've done for the skill acquisition, the movement efficiency, and the work side, then all that had a metabolic consequence. Then you take whatever else you need from a metabolic situation and you put it, you top off the tank at the end. And so that's how my kind of current framework is working, and it seems to have worked well for me, and explaining it to coaches and getting buy-in, and everyone seems to be kind of happy at the end of the day. And I think it also abides to the lack of training history in the weight room that a lot of these footballers have. And so it helps meet them where they're at and kind of carry them on. So
I'm sold.
Okay, perfect. So, let's write the book.
The book's been written, hasn't it?
Yeah, you know what? It absolutely has. And I'm, as Dave Joyce can attest, English is not my best subject, and getting things down on paper, and that's it. Like, it's just taking science, kind of reapplying it, repackaging it, taking a lot of stuff like Brett Bartholomew and Nick in the communication side of things, and just being able to tell a story in a clean way that gets people bought into, what's happening.
So just one last thing that came to me late in the day with regards to the Twitter messages, and that was self-improvement and kind of fitting that in around your busy schedule. You've obviously mentioned a little trip to Sydney, and that's obviously one way of that kind of ticks that kind of self-improvement box. But during a busy season, what's your kind of go-to resources for that?
Yeah, guys like you. The podcasts, being in Rome, I spend a ton of time in traffic. I went from living in a town of 14,000 people, little mountain town, and 2 stoplights, and my commute was about a 30-second walk down to the coffee pot, to sitting in cars for 40 minutes one way or an hour one way, which to me is, I want to shoot myself, but other people, it's kind of commonplace. So the podcasts have been massive, a massive help. And then a lot of books on tape, Audibles, my new best friend, as we were talking offline earlier, trying to get that. And then, the football season's tough because it's just, it's 11 months out of the year. And so, it's really hard to do Con Ed. And so the podcast, I'm trying to still figure it out. Having guys like bringing in people, but you need a coach to give you a schedule more than 3 days in advance so you can plan bringing people in. So that's what we're working on for next year. Or just making it happen and kind of seeing where the cards roll. I think when people come to visit, I get requests now and again for people to drop by. And so I think I'm going to start negotiating with them that if they drop by, which we love, they got to give us a 2-hour presentation or a 40-minute presentation on something that they feel passionate about.
I was gonna actually mention about coming to Rome, but I think I may be busy now.
I know. that just controlled the volume of people coming through, right? Because if it's one way, like, oh yeah, I love having people in Rome. Pretty soon, there's a lineup at the door to come and watch us train. But yeah, no, there's got to be a quick pro quo. So if you like giving presentations, you got the topic, then you're more than welcome to come visit and give us 40 minutes on what you feel passionate about.
Yeah, Adelaide guys do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's funny. Joyce is fantastic. He already hit me up. He's like, "Hey, Darcy, if you're going to come, do you want to give us a presentation on so we can get some information?" I was like, I'm going to steal that from that guy. So, and two, I got to give a big shout out to the Aussies. They've been absolutely, like, being Canadian. A lot of people say Canadians are so nice, but I think the Aussies got us beat. And because they've just been, like, all the doors have been open. Sorry, fellas. Now everyone's probably going to be calling you and wanting to come and drop by. But I do have to give guys presentations. So, I'm really looking forward to the trip. I'm really kind of, I being grown up in Canada, not terribly familiar with rugby. I know they do a bunch of phenomenal stuff, and I see all the YouTube videos and all that kind of thing, and I'm really looking forward to just walking through the door and observing and seeing how it all goes down, and trying to upgrade our culture in the process and move it forward. It's I'm super psyched. So
you'll have a great trip.
Yeah, I think so. I got some good hosts, Dave Joyce and Andrew Gray and Rob from the Swans. So I'm really looking forward to it.
No, you love it. Absolutely love it. So just to kind of wrap up, where can people keep in touch with what you've got going on?
Yeah, I'm not much of a social media guy. Gosh, I should be, but I'm not. I think I got my head too buried in the sand to do that. On Twitter, I'm at Darcy Norman. I tend to retweet. I'm not bright enough to come up with my own quotes and kind of one-liners. And then Facebook is a little more personal for me. It's kind of a closed loop, just because of the press here in Europe. They take one thing you say and turn it into a disaster. So,
drama.
I just don't. Yeah, exactly.
Drama,
my contribution has been to hang out, and do some podcasts when available and people want me to, and presentations now and again. So I'm not out there that much. I should be, but it's just not enough time at the moment.
No, that's cool. We understand.
Yeah. Also, 2 kids. I think all these guys doing stuff. I don't know. Like Joyce, he doesn't have any kids, and that guy. That's my excuse. I got a 13-year-old, 11-year-old. So whatever time I do have, I want to spend with them and my wife, and keep them from leaving me.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll just wrap up there and just say thank you very much for your time. But again, for the half an hour beforehand as well. And also for the recording part as well. So really appreciate your time, mate.
Yeah, Rob, great job on everything. I love the podcast. Keep it up, and anytime you want to chat, I'm more than happy to make time. It's good time. I know it's the first time we've chatted, but I feel like we're old mates. So
absolutely,
when you come to Rome, let's get some coffee and beer and whatever else. And likewise, 100%. If I hit the UK, I'll definitely hook you up.
Touch. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks again for your time, and we'll, like you say, we'll speak soon.
All right, man. Take care.
Thanks,
all the best.
Thanks,
ciao,
mate.
ciao.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 89 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the chat with Darcy. So just before I let you go, I want to say a massive thanks to both Coach Me Plus and Vald Performance for sponsoring the podcast today. So if you do want to keep up to date with everything that's going on in the podcast, the best place to follow me is Twitter, and that's at Pacey Perform. And all the episodes will go live on a Thursday morning, as they have done for the last 2 years now. So follow me on Twitter, and that'll keep you up to date with everything that's going on and all the guests that are coming on. So hope you enjoyed my chat with Darcy. All feedback welcome, and I will speak to you next week.